Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, June 8th, and rally continues to go on here. We got where did we close for the day? S&P up 1.2%. Q's underperformed just a touch. It looks like that kind of a little bit of a mini rotation out of tech and so forth, and continues to kind of go into more industrial, financial value names, and the small caps are up 1.9% for the day. So, I mean, talk about if you want to see one of those rotations that's really not that bad. How about this? Qs were basically flat on the day, but they continue to kind of rally, just like they did on Friday, too. So, the theme of the day that I'm calling this is basically what I said on Friday. It seems like it's the mother of all short squeezes. That continues. You take any names that have a high short interest, and they seem like they're just off to the races. And it just kind of tells you that there's a lot of liquidity. There's a lot of pent up buying right now in the market. I thought it was pretty interesting what Stan Druckenmiller had to say this morning on CNBC. Even I view him as one of the best of the best. Even he missed this rally a bit. So, nobody's perfect. I think at this point, looking at, I mean, even the pot stocks got involved today. So when does this rally end? I guess is probably what everybody's going to, try to game and think about. But I'll tell you, you could have said it last week. You could have said, well, last week we went too far. So I think at this point, you're going to probably see more and more victory laps on Twitter these days. But really, I think that one of the things that I would say to do like a victory lap about, if you've been a member of Tribeca Trade Group, and one of the things that I talk about in the weekend video every weekend is that price and trend are number one. We go through a number of factors. We look at credit spreads. We look at overall market sentiment, which we know has been hot. But really, there just hasn't been a sell signal in any of the indices, and they've actually gotten stronger. So really, it's a good, if you've missed part of this rally, I think it's one of those things that it's a good lesson to learn, right? There's always lessons to be learned. There's always things that every trader can be doing better. Nobody ever gets to like the top of the rock of trading and says, they figured it all out. But I really, since I became a trend trader a few years back, I just have learned that it's the best approach rather than trying to make predictions and gauge where you think it's the market is going to stop going from the downside to the upside. And I think really, if you look back at the beginning of this year, I don't think a lot of people would have said that we were going to go down like this and visit 2330 before we bounce back. And again, just something as simple as the 5-day moving average. I mean, that's probably been one of the best things to use over the last couple months, because on this whole fall down, that we saw back in February and March, one of the things that kind of really helped was watch the price action to say if it's under or above. And it was under, except for just briefly here, 1 or 2 days, and then it resumed its downfall. And it's the same thing here. There's been a couple hiccups along the way where we went sideways, but over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, price is definitely at this point getting extended. But there's no sell signal. There continues to be no sell signal. Now, whether we get that on Wednesday with Mr. Powell speaking, I do think that's the time for me. I will say right now, I don't. I use a combination of things, and of course, being that there's no sell signal, there's nothing for me really to kind of do on the short side except kind of protect yourself. And I think going into a Fed meeting where things can we know that Fed meetings can change direction a little bit. What I would be concerned or watching is whether or not Mr. Powell takes away the punch bowl. Right? If he talks a little bit about saying that that the speculation is running hot, which it is. We know that speculation is running hot. I mean, there's call buyers in just about every name, and every name with a high short interest. I mean, that's really not normal. I will say this. So it's one of those things where yes, it's been absolutely abnormal to see every name with a high short interest. I was joking around about tailored brands. Now they came out and they said that they're going to file for bankruptcy, which doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot because if you have a high short interest, that's going to go up. I mean, look at what Hertz is doing. Hertz has filed for bankruptcy. They're up 115%. They were up last week too. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So of course, like if that doesn't make sense to you, you can either choose to participate in something like this, and manage your risk. Maybe make it a day trade or size it correctly. We talked about that, and there's various names that are taking off with very high volatility. So you have to make sure that, there's things that you could use like the average true range of a stock to make sure that you're sizing trades appropriately because every name is not the same. If a name like this NKLA, which took off, was also up 100% for the day, and closed at just about at the very highs today, up 73. And by the way, this took out, like, there's no more strikes in this name. They're going to have to make new strikes because the highest strike I believe was 55. So we were day trading this one a little bit in the room today, pretty successfully. But the volatility is crazy, So if you're sizing your trades appropriately, you're going to size this one differently than, say a Microsoft or an Apple because the volatility is much different. So there's things like that you should be picking up and learning along the way that you could participate in these things, but notice the average true range and how crazy some of these moves are getting. And you could participate, of course, but you want to make sure that you're doing it in a risk-adjusted basis. And of course, everything. Speaking of risk-adjusted, risk disclaimer: everything that we're going through is information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. But yeah, when I see the pot stocks that are one of the best performing groups, again, I mean, I think I said this in one of yesterday's videos too, that usually when things like the pot stocks rally, it's towards the end of a swing when you have the most speculative and the highest short interest stocks go. I think that's the case, is that we're getting very close to the end of this move. Look at this move. I mean, there was a lot of different moves, but Beyond Meat was up 21%. $28. So the way that now, again, you're going to hear a whole bunch of people on Twitter. Tesla was a great move. This was a trade that we put on Friday. Was up 7% today. So call spread in this one, and of course, you know, it was able to hit a target, of course, right on the open, and then took this trade off at the end of the day because it doesn't expire. I actually have time value working against me because this trade doesn't expire till Friday. What I did is I rolled some profits, and I just rolled them out a little bit because Ron Barron will be on tomorrow on CNBC, I believe, probably talking about Tesla. So I've got a little bit of trade, and really, like, that's the best way I think to kind of manage the situation, is to take some off the table. And so Macy's, another name with with high short interest. What are they seeing now? I mean, if all the bad news is good news, Macy's sees to have sufficient liquidity to address op needs. Well, that'll probably send the stock up. Let's see what the stock's doing here. It doesn't right now. It just doesn't matter. Look at it. It's up to $10 in the after hours. Now again, it doesn't mean that anybody's shopping there, but again, this environment, for as long as it lasts, and I think this way, the way that we're playing it right now, is to take profits and then just mess with the profits, right? And as long as you're managing it on a day-to-day basis like that, who cares if it ends badly? If you're taking profits and you're messing with the house's money. That's what it's all about, right? Is to be controlling what you can control. If this market wants to go bananas for a couple more, into the Fed meeting, I'm going to have some trades on that are the residuals like this, right? So rolling out and this one. So rolling out and up in some things. The Shack trade worked very well. Microsoft, which we added on Friday, worked pretty well. and so on and so forth. And again, we're just about seeing option activity in every single name, like multiple times. Like NCLH caught a whole bunch of calls again today. So again, the travel names are still going. Interested to see, did the airlines take out Friday's highs? No, they didn't. Kind of interesting there. So inside day in something like AAL, all these names are also seeing call activity. UAL almost took out Friday's high. I thought that might be a little bit of a negative sign, but it didn't really matter much because of the liquidity right now that's in the market. So until the Fed says something different, which again they meet on Wednesday, and it sounds like they were even talking about like increasing stimulus. So we don't even know if that's going to happen, if they're going to take away the punch bowl at this point. Fed expands Main Street program to include more businesses. I mean, I can't imagine that he doesn't get if Powell doesn't mention it in his speech on Wednesday. I would think someone from in the Q&A session is going to go ahead and ask him about the speculation right now that's going on in the stock market. I would think he's going to get multiple questions on that. So we'll see. And again, it's continuing to kind of look for trades breaking out of consolidation, and of course, being mindful of names that have a short interest right now, because the short interest names are just going like crazy. Shorts are being forced to cover, and it's kind of an onslaught for them. A couple names that I'm watching for tomorrow that saw option activity. If we kind of go through, so again, really another great day. And at the Tribeca Trade Group, one of the things that we started doing this week was Q&A. So we did that today at 1 o'clock for about a half hour or so. I thought that was great, to kind of go over some charts and talk about today's themes and a little bit more detail and so forth. And, talk about how if you're going to participate in some trades that have already, like the Beyond Meat have that take off so quickly. But there's ways to kind of manage things, and there's ways to participate even though a name has gone up decently for the day, and we kind of went over that today. So yeah, so some names. I thought this Peloton that went up right at the end of the day was interesting. Somebody bought some. What do they buy? June calls, June 26 calls. Excuse me, which I don't have them in here. But if we bring up this, I should see them in here someplace. There's a nice aggressive buy of Peloton. Here it is. It's only $90,000 in premium. But again, what we're seeing is just the repeat activity over and over and over in some names, and it's pretty stellar. What else do we see today? A big data dog order. Fold probably has some data that's coming out. Big call buyer there. Here's the data dog. Interesting, they went out to November. Really strong that this name. Another name that took off. Again, out of consolidation, we've been talking about that a lot. A lot of names that ran into earnings like crazy have consolidated a bit and are resolving themselves higher. ServiceNow is one that I have my name on. I have my eye on. Sorry, for tomorrow. This Coupa software, the numbers seemed like they were pretty good. It of course ran a bit into earnings too. Let's see if this name's coming back at all. No, not yet. Maybe wait until the conference call. But I didn't think there was anything bad. I thought the numbers were pretty decent, but maybe the expectations were a little bit too high. So that's it, guys. Have a great day, and again, just make sure you're managing and controlling what you can control. More and more, I think before the Fed meeting, what I'll do is just take some money out of my trading account at this point. It's one of the little tricks that I play when I'm trading very well, or the market is moving really well. I don't want to say it's just me, because I think overall I'm just sticking and trying to hang on to this trend for as long as it lasts. And at some point, by the way, one other thing, and maybe that's a good place to kind of leave it for the week. Or not for the week, for the day. Sorry, I'm all confused today. But one place, I think one thing to leave it for today is, there is another upside target that I've got here in the S&P, but I don't mind as long as I'm taking money out of the market every day. I don't mind getting caught, on the day that we actually reverse a little bit, because we don't know what day that's going to be. So it's going to happen where we're going to get a reversal day, probably one day this week. I don't know if it's going to be on Wednesday, the Fed day, but I would think we're going to get one reversal day. Think a couple steps out. Like, I'm okay with that at this point. If I have a reversal in P&L for one day this week, it won't be that big of a for me. It's not going to be that big of a hit, because I keep taking money out of the market. So, if you are lessening the money, if you are lessening the amount that you're exposed to, then it's not going to hurt that much. And also, we're due for it, right? So it should not be surprising at this point. So I tell you, so I still have some trades on. I still have my Microsoft on, and I've got a couple other trades on, and so be it. We're playing with the house money at this point, and we're riding this trend as long as it's going to last. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.